excited to be finally making this video. I wanted to make it about a week ago, but I've been updating the scripts even up until yesterday, the 23rd. I think at this point it's release ready, as you'll see in this video. And what am I announcing? Well, I'm announcing the version 6.0 of my Windows and Linux Xbox One hard drive formatting script. And as you'll see in this list in front of you, there's some new added features which a lot of people have been anticipating now for a couple months since I announced that I was going to add it to the scripts, which is basically adding large drive support. 6.0 scripts supports non-standard greater than 2 terabyte and less than 500 gigabyte drive sizes. And what I'm actually going to show you here, I'm going to split this up into 2 videos, and those 2 videos are going to be one showing you how to use the Windows script, and the other is going to show you how to use the Linux script. For the Windows script, I'm actually going to, this is the system that I'm going to be upgrading here. So this is a 2 terabyte SSHD Seagate, and it's a standard 2 terabyte, meaning it's actually a proper 2 terabyte drive that can be reset. And I'm going to upgrade to 5 terabyte drive. So I'm going to show you how you can basically turn your 1.5 terabyte system into a 4.5 terabyte system. And doing it without Clonezilla and doing it without gparted, and doing it all on a PC, on a Windows PC, and on a Linux PC, and or Mac hardware running Linux, or Mac hardware running Windows. And then on the for the Linux script, for the Linux part of this video, I'm going to actually downgrade from a 2 terabyte to a 256 GB SSD, and this has been something that people have been questioning for a long time. I wouldn't personally recommend this or do this myself, but I think the idea is that you want it to boot as fast as possible, and you want the OS to be on as fast a drive as possible, and then just use an external for all your games, which isn't necessarily a bad idea, just not something I care to do. But that said, I want to show you this actually working as well. So those are the 2 drives I'm going to do. I just wanted to show you that really quick. On my third item here, as I mentioned already, the 6.0 script is a complete replacement for Clonezilla and gparted. The scripts now build the larger drive and then copy your pre-existing drive data to the new drive, to the new 4 terabyte, 5 terabyte drive, or 256 gigabyte drive. The fourth item on here is all data is automatically transferred, which I already touched on. So in the case of Windows, I'm using a program called RoboCopy, which is built into Windows 10. It's built into Windows 7. And it copies your 2 terabyte to your 4 terabyte. Okay, and on Linux I use something called rsync, which is very similar to RoboCopy. In fact, it's probably better than RoboCopy, but I won't get into that too much. Old features are still supported with this new script, so number 5 here. So I still support creating a legitimate 500 gigabyte, 1 terabyte to 2 terabyte drive, and that's again for any Xbox OG, S, or X system. You can basically create a brand new 2 terabyte drive, as you did in the past, and then use OSU 1 if you are basically building a new drive on a system that either the old hard drive has died and or you're looking to upgrade and you don't want to deal with the old files. I would recommend, if you have a working drive in any case, to still use this script to copy the data from the working drive to the new drive. So if you have a working 500 gigabyte drive, use the script to upgrade it to a standard 2 terabyte drive, just as you would to make it a non-standard 4 terabyte or 5 terabyte. The reason being is it's just easier, and you'll see what I mean by that. You don't have to deal with the whole creating the A and B folders and then or using a USB flash drive to basically upgrade the drive. And a lot of the times you have to reset as a part of that process, and there's some risk involved with that too. The goal with this whole 6.0 script is to not have to reset the system, to be able to build drive sizes that are non-standard, and also build drives that are standard for upgrade, but not have to use any other method anymore, Clonezilla or gparted or anything like that, just using my scripts. And a Windows 7 or Windows 10 machine, and or a Linux Live USB, or just a Linux install itself. Okay, number 6 on there, all my older videos, I'm still going to point to the older script, because the 6.0 script is, as you're going to see, is very different than the 5.0 script in that the menu choices have changed considerably. So this video will relate to the 6.0 script, but all my old videos won't be relevant to the 6.0 anymore. So going forward, this is the video I'm going to point people to. This video, this is the video I'm going to point you guys to. And I'm not going to change the links like I used to in the older videos. So there you go. So some caveats to this new script. If you're making a non-standard drive, so if you're making a larger than 2 terabyte and a smaller than 500 gigabyte, user content will now be partition 5 instead of 2. What that basically means is that certain reset procedures to reset the system, if you have some sort of problem, either with an account that you can't remove or a game that you can't remove, and you want to reset the system, it's likely to break the 4 terabyte or 5 terabyte drive. It may not, and I will do a separate video just on the resetting. Okay, and you'll see exactly what happens. And that's actually number 8, console reset not supported. Again, separate video, and we'll see exactly. There are 2 types of resets. They both erase accounts, save games, and settings, and home Xbox associations. One method removes everything, and the other method, or the second method, keeps games and apps. So keeping games and apps may actually be fine. It may be the first one where you remove everything that's bad. It may work. I don't really know. I haven't actually tested that part of it yet. But in the past, whenever you've made a non-standard drive, meaning that it's has a disk ID of a 500 gigabyte drive and it's a 2 terabyte or a 1 terabyte drive, resetting usually causes problems. So I suspect that'll still be an issue, but that's something that we'll test. The hardware that you're going to require, you're going to need 2 USB to SATA adapters or 2 free SATA ports on the system that you're going to be running my scripts on. And let's go back to the camera here. So what you're going to see in this video today is I'm going to be using 2 of these, and the link will be in the description of the video to what this is. This is a StarTech USB 3.0 to SATA adapter. This uses USB 3.0 and provides power and data just through a single cable. So this works fine with these 500 gigabyte drives, and then you just plug it into a free USB 3 port. You can use USB 2.0 ports, but the process will be much slower. And this works fine with SSD drives as well, as you can see here. Now, I'll get into it, of course, with this video, why you need 2 of these, but it basically amounts to, if you have a working drive, you're going to want to bring the data over. It's just a much cleaner process. And when you're making non-standard drives, it's the only process. Okay, so let's get started here. So what I'm first going to show you is just this, how the current configuration of this Xbox One here. And yeah, so let's go. So I'm going to shrink this down a little bit, and I just want you to see the system booting, and I'm going to show you the existing drive size, and I'm going to show you a game loading, just basically to show you that the system works, and then show you after I clone it, everything's still working. So we're going to start this up. Well, this works with the controller, but I'm going to show you me hitting the button here, and then system booting. You've seen the system several times before, I'm sure. Hopefully the volume on that wasn't too loud. But what I want to show you here is basically this is a 2 terabyte drive, so I'll show you the current storage space on the system. What I've done too in this case is I've removed almost as many games as possible. Because I want the copy process to go as fast as possible. If you have a 2 terabyte drive now and it's basically full, the process you're going to see later of me copying the data from one drive to another is going to take a long time. Okay, so we're going to start the controller here. Now you can see I've connected to Xbox Live. It would tell you pretty clearly if you have any experience with Xbox One that you need to connect to Xbox Live. So the first thing we're going to do is go over to settings, and I want to show you I'm hiding my account, that's why I have the bar up in the top, but we'll look at the current storage, and you can see, so I'm only using 1% of the drive, but this is 1.6 TB. I keep pointing, but you guys can't see that. This is a 1.6 terabyte drive. This is, again, considered an Xbox One standard drive. This would reset properly and behave how you would expect a drive that shipped with your system to function. Okay. Okay, I just want to show you what games I have installed. So right now, I just have 3 games installed. I have a backwards compatible game and Firewatch. All these are digital games. Well, though Game of Thrones, I guess, can have a disc. But I'll show you Firewatch loading up here. And this is a digital-only game, so this wouldn't load unless I was connected to the network. I don't actually have to play it, but I just, at the very least, want to show you it starting and getting into the menu. There you go. So you can see the game functions. All right, so at this point, we're going to pull the drive, and we're going to start the process of actually cloning the drive, or copying the data from the drive and building a new drive. So let's turn the console off. And we're going to shut off our capture here. So the first thing that we're going to do here, and let me hide the camera here because you don't really need to see it. Now, as I said, I'm making a Windows video and a Linux video. The only 3 things that you're going to need to download are my scripts, a copy of my scripts, which is just a zip file. If you're doing the Linux process, you're going to want to download the latest Ubuntu desktop ISO and Linux Live USB Creator to basically burn this or copy this ISO to a USB flash drive. Okay, but the first thing I'm going to cover here is the Windows portion of it, so you don't need to worry about these 2 guys here. So basically, in the description of this video, I'm going to have 2 links. One is going to be to file trip for this version of the script. Well, it's the same version of the script in both places, but for the 6.0 version of the script. And basically you just use this to download the file. Okay, which I've already done. That's what's on my desktop here. Or you can use my other link, which is to my Google Drive. And as I said before, I have the 6.0 script, and I'm going to leave the 5.0 script in place, just so people still have access to the older version of the script. And I also have the boot animation file, which I did a video prior to about restoring the boot animation. Because we're cloning a working drive to this new drive, we don't need to worry about this boot animation getting lost. Okay, so now as far as downloading on Google Drive, you just right-click it and select download. And same sort of deal here. But I've already downloaded it, so I'm just going to click cancel. Okay. And once we have it downloaded, now you might have yours downloaded to your downloads folder, like this, downloads. In this case, basically you can right-click it and you can copy it, and then you can put it on your desktop. As I said, here it is already on the desktop, so I'm not going to do it again. Now, I have 7-zip on this computer. I would recommend getting a copy of 7-zip as well. I'm not going to show that here. It's not a necessity. There's other ways to get the archive, to get this unzipped, basically. But I'm going to basically unzip this to the desktop. So we're going to say OK here. And now we have a copy, an unzipped version of the script on the desktop. Okay, so let's quickly go in this folder. I'm going to describe what's in it. So you'll see there's basically a root directory of the Xbox One HDD master. Within that, there's a Linux directory and a Win directory. And as you might think, one holds all the Windows scripts and programs, and the other holds all the Linux scripts. I have a README for this as well. This walks you through basically the Linux version of the script. And in this particular case, it gives you some disclaimers, explains the command line usage and some of the switch usage. The Linux script is very different than the Windows script. Instead of asking you what to do, you basically tell it what to do when you run it at runtime. So basically you run the script telling it everything you want to do beforehand, as opposed to running the script and then telling it after you've already started the script. Okay. So for people wanting to use the Linux script instead of the Windows script, maybe they well, maybe they have a Linux system in general and they just want to use that instead. Or perhaps they're having trouble with the Windows script and they feel more comfortable with the Linux script. I will say the Linux script has better language compatibility. So if you have some issues with just getting this to work and Englishize it on the Windows side of things, doesn't do the job for you and doesn't get it working, or you can't get the English language installed, English US installed on your system, then the Linux script is the way to go. So there's a couple extra downloads for this though, unless again you have a Linux system. And same sort of deal. You download the Xbox, the script that I've created, because the Linux files themselves are already in that. Here, let me shrink this down. But you're also going to want to download this thing called Linux Live USB Creator. The link will be in the description. You basically click this and download it. And in this case, I've already downloaded it and I put it on my desktop. This is an installer, so you would just double click this and you would just run through the install process. I get a quick prompt there if this is what you want to do. So you just click next and you just run through. I guess it's safe enough to do this. Say install. Even though it's already installed, it'll just reinstall a second time. Okay, installation complete. And we'll leave that checked. Okay, there we go. So this part's ready to go. But now we actually need the copy of Ubuntu to basically put on our flash drive. So we're going to go back to our web browser here, and again, the link will be in the desktop for in the description below. And basically, you go to this page here, and there's this long-term service. Either one of these is fine. There's an older version of Ubuntu, which is their longer supported release, and then there's the latest version. In this particular video, I'm going to show you using the latest. We just click download here, and you don't have to give them any money. You can just say not now. It is free. It's just one of those things that they do. So it will download this, and that's actually what's already on my desktop, so I'm not going to download it again. It is about 1.5 gigs in size, so it will take some time to download. Okay, so and that's what I have here. And so now at this point, we're going to, I have a flash drive here. It's a SanDisk. I think this is a 16 gig drive. I have it labeled gparted, but this is what we're going to put in here. So I'm going to put this into my system right now. Should show up, I think, as an F drive. Or D drive. Okay. So we're going to go to our live creator here. We're going to select our, well, we're going to refresh because I just plugged in. So we're going to click this little refresh button here. And here's our D drive. You want it formatted FAT32, which is what most USB flash drives would be anyways. But there is an option down here to format it, so you don't have to worry too much about that. We're going to get our ISO. So in this case, it's on our desktop, but if it was in our downloads, we could go to our downloads. It doesn't really matter. So we're going to select this, open it, and it will just scan the ISO to make sure it knows what the heck it is, and if it can use it, it should be okay. There you go. And so it's not on the list, but it'll say it's going to use the closest thing it could find, which is just an older release of Ubuntu, and that's fine. Now we'll create some persistent space, and what that is a an area of the flash drive where we can basically copy files to and have those files survive a reboot, because you're using a live install of Ubuntu. As soon as you shut it down, you basically lose everything from memory and everything like that. So this allows you to create some space. I usually just create 1 gigabyte. That seems to be enough. I think you could probably just leave it at 0, because the scripts that we're going to use, we're going to copy directly to the USB flash drive. We don't need to worry about this persistent space. But I do it anyways, just in case it's required, or if we run into trouble later. But this does take a little extra time, so if you use the full 4 gigs here, it will take that much longer to build the drive. Okay, then for our options here, I usually leave this checked, hide created files on the key. And I also leave this checked as well, enable launching Linux Live in Windows. I don't ever do that, but it seems maybe a worthwhile thing that you might want to do in the future. And lastly, it's safe to just say, format, which I'll do there. And we'll just click this lightning thing here. And it says you're going to lose all your data on the drive. Perhaps you have something on that drive you want to keep. Make sure you copy it off of that key first. Okay, so basically wait for it to go through all the steps here. When it's done, it'll open up a web browser. And so I'll fast forward here a bit, and you can see this all done. And then I'll show you putting these scripts onto the key. Okay, so you can see here it says that your Linux Live key is now up and ready. It did open a web browser, but in one of my other screens, so you didn't see it. But that's okay. So you can see it's this is the notice that you're looking for. So at this point, we can close this down. Now, just a reminder, this isn't the only way to create a bootable USB, Ubuntu Live USB flash drive. There are other ways to do it, but this is the way I feel like it's the least amount of work. But there you go. Okay, so the one thing we have left to do now that we're done actually creating the drive, or creating the bootable drive, is we want to put our scripts on here. So we have already gone through the process of extracting this to the desktop, which is here. So now we want to basically copy the entire folder to our D drive in this particular case. You can see there's our virtual box for booting on Windows. So there you go. So now we have our scripts all ready to go. And at this point, we'll just eject and attach this to our soon-to-be Linux machine. Okay. So let me, we're going to switch here some screens. Okay. So we have our USB flash drive here. We have our 2 terabyte drive and our 256 SSD, and this is what we're gonna actually move the data from here to here. So I'm gonna hook this up to a machine off to the side here. I have, again, my camera's stationary, so I can't easily show you this, but this particular desktop has basically hooking up the 2 SATA internal SATA ports to these drives. So if I had a laptop, I could put one of the drives inside the laptop. If it supported SATA drives, then I could use a USB thing. Or if I had enough USB-free ports, I could use 2 of these. This system is an older system, so it doesn't have USB 3. So in order to speed it up, I'm just going to do it internally. Okay, so they're hooked up, and we're going to boot up our Linux here. There's nothing really to show you here. So let's start this up. Now hopefully you'll be able to see this. I've had some trouble in the past getting Linux to output to my capture card, but let's see how this goes. Okay, all right, so sorry about all that. What a pain. So I had to at least get that in some sort of readable format there. I know you couldn't see what went on earlier. So I should close. Oh, sorry. All right. I get confused as to which mouse button I should be using. All right, so. All right. So yeah, so I know it was hard to see, but I just said try Ubuntu, and then I went in and had to fix the displays because my capture card was just it was just having Linux, or Ubuntu was just having a lot of difficulty detecting what the proper resolution was for my capture card, which is what you saw there. I think it's 1280 by 720 basically. All right, so we're going to actually make the drive now. So we want to first open a terminal. So we're going to right click and we're going to say open terminal. Okay. Now we already put the scripts on our flash drive, so we have to get to that flash drive mount point, which is CD, media, CD-ROM, Xbox, and I'm just starting to type, and then you hit tab again, and then Linux, and there we go. So there's our scripts, and we're ready to go. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is figure out where our drives are. So the first command we're going to run is // and we're going to type list. And we're going to hit enter on that. And it's going to complain that we're not root. So we need to do sudo as well. Hit enter. And it'll show us the drives. So you can see here SDA is our 256 and SDB is our 2 terabytes. So we're going to, so basically our B drive is our source and our target is A, and the C is our 16 gig flash drive. Okay, so basically we know what we need to work with. So what I'm going to do, what I have been doing, is we'll put this over to the side because we can use this to reference later, and we're going to open another terminal, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to CD to media, CD-ROM, Linux, okay. And there's a script. So we're going to do this again. We need to do sudo, but I want to show you what happens when you don't do it. It tells you need to run a sudo. That's fine. So I'm going to type sudo and just the command. Now, in the README file, there's some information about how to use the script, but if we just run the script on its own, it gives us some example commands to run. So again, if we look over to our right here, we know that A is the drive that we want to format. Now we don't know what's on the drive, although we can check it. So if we come back over here, and it tells us we can do dev, and we can tell it the device that we want to check what's going on. So let's do that. Let's do dev/SDA, and we'll see what's on it. And you can see there's some Microsoft stuff on there, which is basically all this garbage here. It's not an Xbox drive, that's fine. But I'm showing you that because basically what we're going to want to do is run this first bit. So again, I'm just going to run the prior command just so we can see our dis for reference. So basically, here are all of our options. We have a C and a D. So the D is the one that you're familiar with if you've used my script in the past, but basically D is always the drive that we want to make our new drive, and C is the source drive that we want to copy data from. There's a few other switches here. There's a stage, which there's a 0 stage, which will fully erase the drive, which is specified by D. There's a 1, which will erase and partition the drive, specified by D. There's stage 2, which will copy the source drive, specified by -C, data to the target drive, specified by -D. And stage 3, which will rewrite the drive GUIDs. So in this particular case, we're going to just erase the drive just so we know we have a clean thing to go with. So we'll start that. So we'll do sudo create, and we want to specify the drive with a -D, dev SDA. SDA is our 256, and we're going to tell it to S for stage, and then we can put a space in here. We don't have to, but stage 0. So this should erase the drive, and you can see SDA has been wiped. So if we come back over to our other window here, and we do, sorry, I know you can't see, I wish the screen was a little bit bigger so you could see everything all in one. But you can see now there's no partitions on SDA. Now, one thing you can do, which is nice, to check on things. So if we do, I'll just point this out. So we're just going to be running the scripts from the command line. However, you may want to open, so we click over to the left there. activities. So we click on activities, and we're going to search for gparted. And gparted is just a graphical version of parted. And parted is a great tool for basically managing partitions. I've used it in some of my earlier videos. But this will allow us to visually look at our drives here. So we have our B drive. This is basically our Xbox One drive. We can see all the partitions and the labels that we're familiar with. And this is our A drive. So I should have brought this up before I actually erased it, but you can see after erasing it, it's completely blank here. And so we'll be able to look at A again when the script's done and see the changes that we've done. So we're going to come back over here to our scripts, and we'll put this aside so we can remember what's going on. So at this point, we want to basically do the next stage, which is erase and partition the drive specified with D. So if stage 0 was to erase it, stage 1 will erase it again and partition it. Stage 0 isn't really necessary. It's just if you want to erase without actually formatting. So we're going to go here to stage 1, hit enter. Oh. And already I'm forgetting what I'm supposed to do here. I'll let that go through. That's fine. But that's not really ideally what I want to do. So we didn't specify one of the options here. So basically it's coming back and saying partition incomplete, and it's giving you an idea of what you want to run next. However, we did not specify the disk type option here, the -T. So what we're going to wind up with, if we come over here and we need to refresh this, let's see. One of these guys will do it. There we go. Refresh devices. And we'll look at what we did here. So basically, we, well, it looks like it did do the right thing. It did do an auto size. So let's look at our options here. So basically, the M tells it to mirror standard partition size to specify with T or drive D. Okay, yeah. So I forgot we were shrinking the drive. We actually did the right thing here. Let's see if we go back to the script output here. We're just going to scroll up a little bit with our mouse. And what does it want us to do? Copy folder contents with a stage 2 and add a source drive. Okay, so let's come over here, and we will list our A partition. And you can see there that, oh yeah, okay, we haven't signed the GUIDs with age. Boy, it's been on, I used this a couple weeks ago, then you just sort of forget. Plus it's getting late. So, okay. So, the first bit partitions the drive, but it does not set the proper Xbox GUIDs. It does add the labels, as you can see here. But it doesn't change the GUIDs properly. Okay, so we're actually doing fine. So that's what we wanted. And I don't specify here, but if you don't specify T, it defaults to 500 GB. And but we might be creating, you know, you might want it. So what's the best way to explain this? So the T specifies the GUID to set on the drive. That's either we want to make it, the new drive that we're making, we want to either appear as a 500 GB, a 1 TB, or a 2 TB. In the case of this 256, we want it to appear as a 500 gigabyte because it's the closest size. However, since it is too small, it doesn't really matter what we select here, but the 500 gigabyte would be what we'd want to select. If we were doing a 5 terabyte drive or 4 terabyte drive, which I suspect most of you will want to do, we'll want to do the T2. So I will specify the T going forward just so you can see that syntax. Now, if you leave out the M causes it to mirror standard drive size is specified with T. Meaning if you have an M, even if you have, let's say, a 4 terabyte and you specify T2, it will make it a standard 2 terabyte. If I leave off the M, it will label it as a 2 terabyte but make it a non-standard 4 terabyte, if that's not too confusing. So in this particular case, we have a 256. We're going to basically make the disk type a 500 GB but we don't want to mirror it, and we can't mirror it because it's too small. So let's go back to our command that we just ran, which is we specified D as SDA, which is correct, and we specified stage 1, but we didn't specify the type, which is fine. But just to show you, when we do our stage 2 now, and stage 2 will be to actually copy the data, we want to tell it, we should put in the, use the T, sorry, it's minus T, not equal, minus T, and we want to make it disk type 0, and we want to leave off the M. But I'm going to show you what's going to happen when we do this, because we don't have the, because I'm leaving off a switch basically, so we're going to hit enter on that, and it's going to come back, and it's scrolled off a little bit here, but if we look up, it will tell us option C is required with S2. So we specified basically stage 2, but we didn't specify C, which is bad. So we want to add a C, and C is our source drive. So we're going to say /dev /SDB. Okay, and we know this because when we ran this here, that B is our 2 terabyte drive. Okay, so basically we're telling it to do stage 2. Stage 2 is to copy source data from C to D, and C is B, which is this drive here, and D to target drive D, and D is our SDA, which is this here. Okay, and the only last thing is the minus T. The T doesn't really do anything here, but it will be useful in when we do our stage 3. Okay, so basically when we're making a non-standard drive, we need to run each of the steps, 1, 2, and 3. 0 we can leave off because 1 is built in. You can see the erase here is actually built into step 1. But I was just showing you how to use step 1 earlier. Okay, anyways, enough talk. Let's actually run it. And so this uses rsync to actually do the copy, and it will list the files that it's copying as the process continues here. Okay, so at this point, we're just basically going to let it do its thing. It's going to go through each of the partitions and copy all the data. So this can take a little while to run. I didn't time how long it took on the Windows side of things, but it seemed to take about 20 minutes or so. So we'll let this just run along here. Okay, so the copy process took a little over half an hour. I think it started at 5:55 and it's done at 6:27. So that was stage 2. Now I know I made this a little more confusing, by kind of building the commands, and the way I was explaining it, I don't think was the clearest. But essentially, when a command's finished, it tells you what the next step is. And what I wanted to point out in this process, if you decide the switches that you need to use, for instance, you want to use T0 because you want to make a 500 gigabyte drive, the stages should go 1, 2, and 3 straight through. And if you specify the D, which is the source drive, which is the destination target drive, and you specify C, which is the source drive, you can do that throughout, and all you have to do is change the S value. So, which is basically what it's suggesting here, is that we do our, basically our S3 is saying to do stage 3, and this type 0, which is what we, the minus T we've already specified here, and the drive SDA. So the C will just be ignored in this particular case because it's not necessary for the command here. Sorry. Anyways, all right, so let's do that. So let's finish this off. So the last stage 3 is setting the GUID values to be appropriate for the drive. And there you go. So that's it. So what we see here is the finality of the drive. So this is our 256. We have user content at the end of the disk, and it's only 138 GB, which you can imagine a normal Xbox drive size is 365. So we've basically cut more than 200 gigabytes off the drive. But that's okay because we're not going to store our games there. We're going to instead use the SSD. At least that's the theory. That's not what I'm going to be doing, but I just wanted to show you that it's possible to use a drive smaller than 500 GB. Anyways, all right, so at this point we're done because we can verify these GUIDs against the README Linux file, which if you did want to do that, you could, let's see, we'd have to open a file explorer here. I think is this guy here. And then what we want to do is other locations. Yeah, okay, yeah, so we can do a computer, and we can do our media, our CD-ROM, and we want to look for our XMaster here, our Linux, and here's our README file. And in here, there are GUID values listed. And oops. Ubuntu's constantly changing, and I'm not overly used to the way all the new stuff works these days. But anyways, so there we can basically compare. So the A2 is the 500 GB listed here, which is the first one, and is what it says that it found. And then the other 5 partitions should match up, although they will be out of order. So for instance, the 8.6, the user content is last in this case. And then we got the B3, C9, 9A, and 24. Okay, anyways, so there you have it. So at this point, we have the drive ready to go. So all we have to do here is shut down. If you want to verify everything in gparted, you can use gparted refresh devices just to make sure things look okay. And now we can see some space used, and we see we still have plenty of space left on here because there's only 3 games actually on the drive. We look at our B drive, which was our source drive, and you can see that looks okay too. And we're essentially done. So let's we'll close gparted here, and we'll initiate the shutdown. The power. This is much different than the other versions I'd used in the past. We'll just say power off. And see a garbled mess. But the system should shut down on its own at this point. And there we go. Okay, so we're going to pull the drive from our system here and actually put it into our Xbox One. Okay, so if you watched my Windows video, I just showed you, or I basically upgraded the system to a 5 terabyte from a 2 terabyte. So for this video, as you know, we've been doing the 256 gig instead. So we're going to actually try to boot this up and see how this works. This is the first time I've actually done this. I've been telling people for a long time to not downgrade their drives, but a lot of people have asked about it because they've wanted to do something like this because of how expensive SSDs are. So here you go. So this should be proof that this can actually be done. And the other thing I'm going to do is I already booted with a 5 terabyte earlier, so I'm going to time this startup with a 256 as a solid state and see if we can get an idea for the boot up time difference. I would hope it would be faster, but we'll see how fast it actually is in a moment here. Okay, so you can see booted up okay. Oh, so my controller here, I gotta start it up. Okay, so we're going to go to settings here. Have the menus pretty much memorized at this point. So check out our storage, and you can see here we have 118 gigs free of 137. So you can see we actually have an internal drive now that's smaller than 500 gigabytes. So so yeah, there you go. How awesome is that? So the only thing left to do is actually run the game, which I'll also time that and just see how much faster that is, just to get to at least the starting point where you can start up the game. But yeah, so let's do that. Let's go to our home and let's start up Firewatch. I haven't actually played this game yet. It was on sale a week ago for $10 instead of the usual $20. So you got to seem to boot pretty fast. I will hit A on it just to see what happens. Yeah, there you go. Cool. All right. Well, there you go. So this is an SSD. Basically, this shows you, you can run an SSD in your Xbox One. I've already been telling people that for a while. But this also shows you how to basically, I took a 2 terabyte drive and downgraded it to a 256. It's probably about the most extreme you can go. Yeah. So there you go. All right, well, I'll see you in my next video. I'm going to do a video on actually upgrading. I'm not going to upgrade this drive because I don't really care to be using this. But I am going to do a system update with the 5 terabyte drive. So I'm going to show you that process. I mean, it's a normal update that you would do from the network, but I just want to show you that the drive still works after an update. And aside from that, the only other thing is to show you a reset. I may or may not show a reset with this drive. I mean, since the non-standard is non-standard, it either works or it doesn't. I'm probably going to stick to the 5 terabyte, which people are going to care about. But I assume on this 256 drive that you wouldn't be able to reset it properly. But it might be worth trying. So maybe I'll make one of just this as well, just to see what happens. Well, I guess that's about it. So I'll see you guys in my next video.